Aaron Marsters here, wanting to talk to you today about integrating assistive technology into the problem-solving process. I ran into this document the other day while looking online. It is created actually by Community Unit School District 200 from Illinois, and Daniel Cochran is the author, and he is the one that also the person that wrote the speech recognition guide as assistive technology for writing that you often hear me referencing with Kelly Key. So I really like this author, and he has some great ideas on integrating assistive technology, and I wanted to share that with you all as a process for considering and implementing assistive technology for students that you might be working with. So the first step is identifying the problem, and he gives a series of steps to analyzing the context, determining the task demands, and then analyzing the student factors, giving teams different prompts to look at what are we looking at when we're analyzing context factors, the physical factors of the environment, social and cultural factors, what type of demands is the task placing on the student, what are their physical demands, sensory demands, attention demands, cognitive, what are the current levels of performance, identifying which areas are difficult or impossible, student preferences come into play. And so we've identified all these areas of the student need, and I really like how it goes next into what are we going to do about it. And so are we going to change the context somehow? Are we going to utilize some sort of intervention to support that student? So we're changing the context by considering these individual accommodations, which might include assistive technology, using those universal design features within the curriculum, within the school settings. We might also be looking at what interventions are being is the student engaging with right now, being medical, therapeutic, behavioral. Are there any other instructional interventions being used with that student? And then we're asking that question, so can that AT augment or replace that difficult task demand? So we're going to consider technology as a way to augment or replace that task, and we're going to be using things like the student preference and different environmental factors to make that determination. And so one tool that we might use is a consideration guide. As a reminder, you do have access to our DoDEA Assistive Technology Consideration Tool. It was created in 2017. It's based off of work of Arizona and Georgia. And what it does is it has a listing of common tasks in the classroom for reading, writing, math, etc., and it provides a list of the standard tools used to provide that, lists different accommodations, recommended accommodations, different modifications, and then provides some assistive technology solutions. Note, this is not a one-stop shop. There are assistive technology options that are not listed on here, but this does help a team once you've considered those student-specific factors and the environmental factors, maybe a place to continue the conversation and to help focus some of the areas to identify features and tools. Another resource that you have available to you is our Assistive Technology Lending Library. So depending on what district you're in, you would reach out to your assistive technology specialist to find out what is in the inventory. So I would encourage those of you in Europe East to go to the mild to moderate and explore the different tools you have available within the classroom, within the school, or within the lending library itself. So back to this guide, if the answer is no, could assistive technology augment or replace a difficult task? Maybe the answer is no, and then we would have therapy, no tech accommodations are sufficient, and the AT features cannot augment or replace that difficult task demand. If the answer is yes, maybe it's already being used, and then we'll continue to implement in progress. Or if it's maybe we then need to collect some of that data and trial. And so if you come to the table with data, you might already be able to say no or yes, but then there are times where you're going to need to go on that information hunt to collect that data to be able to make that informed decision. So I really like how the author breaks it down the steps of choosing and trialing AT. So based off of what the student and task and environmental needs are, we're finding some tools, we're feature matching, we're identifying some pros and cons, we're obtaining those tools. Again, many are available at your school, or contact me or your assistive technology specialist if you have questions. we need to set up the tool. We might need to get an account set up. It might just be utilizing a certain feature within a curriculum. It might be developing the skills to log onto a computer. Once we have those tools in place and we have that initial training, we want to collect some performance data. And so what does the student task look like without using the tool, the pre, and then what does the same task look like with the tool, post? So we're just really comparing the student to themselves with the intervention and without the intervention. And so now we're really getting into that implementation, and we're starting to talk about implementation plan. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a plan that is very popular amongst a lot of folks. This is from the National Assistive Technology Research Institute of the University of Kentucky, and it is an assistive technology implementation plan. And for those of you that really like linear plans that clearly identify all the key features, this is the template for you. It gives your student information, and again, this is not required, but this is recommended to help work on that assistive technology implementation. So really listing who is responsible for working with implementation with that student, what role does that person play, what hardware, low-tech, high-tech devices are going to be used, and what is the status? Do we have these devices available? Do we have these accounts available? Does it belong to the school? Does it belong to the district? Is it a headquarters? Do we need to purchase something? Is there something worth checking out from the lending library? So what needs to be done? Do we have to have work orders in for IT? Do we have to set up accounts by emailing your assistive technology person? What does it require to get some of this technology up? Who's the person responsible for it? And what are some due dates? And now we have some training. So we have all this technology, but does the student need training? What about the family? What about the general ed teachers, special ed teachers? Is there somebody locally that can provide that training? Are you requesting training? Is it a YouTube video? Are there professional modules? How is the team going to learn how to use whatever tool this is, from low tech to high tech? Who are the trainees? And then what are the plans? What is the timeline for that? It's the different focus of training. We have the operational skills, which we tend to focus on just the basic operational components of turning a device on, basic navigation, and then we're getting more into the functional skills of applying that tool to write, to communicate, to access text, and then the strategic skills of when is the tool the best tool to use in that environment. So when is a reading pen more effective than using text-to-speech on a computer? When is handheld spell check better than using word prediction? When is it better to listen to something with just taking a picture and having it scan versus going on Bookshare and pulling a full book? So really having the students identify, or when is it more appropriate to use a quick, maybe an image or a symbol to communicate, or a gesture, versus composing a full message with a augmentative communication device. So really picking the right tool for the context and the environment and the audience. And then lastly, really how do we navigate and the social aspect of it. So sometimes these tools might require the student to engage with peers. You know, are they excited to use it? Are they not excited? How do they advocate for themselves? And how do they make sure that they have access to this accommodation and can understand and explain the accommodation to their peers and to other folks at the school and at home. Now we're looking at classroom implementation of the IEP goal. So what is the goal that we're focusing on? What is the specific task? And then who is responsible and what AT is needed to support that goal? If that assistive technology is deemed needed at home, what is the goal that's being worked on at home? Or is it, if it's access to the curriculum and the student is needing to use the online resources at home, do they have clear logins and directions to do that? Do they know how to use those resources on different devices? What does that look like? And then we're looking at that monitoring and evaluation component of what exactly, and again, I really like how it's broken down here, is comparing the tasks without the tool and with the tool. So what does it look like? What does that accommodation, that assistive technology, look like with or without, or what is that student doing with or without that technology accommodation. So we've talked now about the progress monitoring a little bit in that form, but he breaks it down even more. We want to make sure we're trying to look in that customary environment. It does no good if the student can use a technology effectively in an isolated setting if that's not where that student is typically doing that type of work. So we really want to make sure we're using and reassessing that assistive technology tool, using that pre and post comparison data. If it is showing that AT does improve that task, we need to make sure that it is added to that IEP or that 504 plan. So this is a big one. If you have the data, if we determine that that assistive technology is a need and not just a want, it has to go in the IEP. If we don't have the data, or data shows that it doesn't improve the activity, then we need to kind of ask ourselves why. Do we need to have more training? Has there been adequate opportunities to implement the assistive technology? Is it a technical issue? Is the laptop going dead because the battery's bad on it? Is there something else? Is the Wi-Fi spotty in that part of the school? Is there something else that might have similar features that might also be beneficial? And or do we just determine that the assistive technology might not be the best tool for that task? So these are some really good questions to explore. The answer is not just no, it's no, let's look further, and these can help you guide that discussion and guide that next step of the exploration process. So I really like this cycle from identifying the problem, identifying why it's occurring, and then we might be in this little mini cycle of considering different AT options, choosing it, trialing it, implementing it, progress monitoring, and if we need to go back to the drawing board because the assistive technology might not be working for a specific task, we follow this cycle again. And then the big one, is it working? And maybe it worked for a while, but now the task has changed, so we just reanalyze the problem, why is it occurring, and we go through this cycle. I think this is a great and easy visual, and I think the prompting questions really help a team with properly considering and collecting data to determine if that AT is needed and should be added to the IEP. I hope you find it helpful as well. I will be providing links to everything that I talked about in this video. Good luck.